BookTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to talk about the books that I read in March. And I know March was such a long time ago. So much has happened since then. But for the sake of completeness, I just wanted to come on here and talk about the 7 books that I read in March. And I've already told you about most of them because March was when I read most of the books that I needed to read for the BookTube prize that I was judging, the octafinals round of the fiction prize. So I've told you about some of the books, but I do have a few more books that I need to just mention and let you know that I read them and what my thoughts were on them. So 7 books completed in March. There was another book that I started and almost finished, but I'm still hanging on to about 100 pages of that one. So there's another book that I read most of in March that will feature in my April recap. But for now, the first book that I finished in March was One Little Lie by Colleen Coble. And this one is an arc that I got from the publisher. This is the beginning of a series called the Pelican Harbor series that's set in the South, Alabama. And we're following a young woman who becomes police chief in her small town. She gets the job when her father has retired. And it seems like her father is being framed, either that or he's just a really bad man. And the book opens with a prologue where we see the father and daughter escaping from a cult that they were a part of right after the daughter gave birth. And so there is some element of intrigue and mystery as we're trying to figure out how the two events are related. So in this one we get a little bit of crime drama, a little bit of suspense, a little bit of romance. And because it is the beginning of a series, it ends not quite with a cliffhanger, but without a real resolution of some things, which is okay if that's not the element that you came for. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was just fast-paced enough, but also just slow enough. So this was one that I enjoyed reading. This is the Pelican Harbor series. This one is being published with Thomas Nelson Publishers, and I've gotten quite a few books from them to review, and I've enjoyed most of the things that I've gotten from them. So I want to get more from that series ASAP. And this one was released in March 2020, and I think the next installment should be coming out pretty soon. The next book that I finished was a YA novel that I was reading in electronic format. And I was reading that because it fulfills a challenge for a book challenge that I'm doing on Facebook. And this one was to read a book that is one of those locked room mysteries, I think. And so I chose One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. And this one is about a group of 5 teenagers who are locked in detention with a teacher after school, and one of the students dies, and so of course other few students are suspects. And it's about trying to solve the mystery of this boy's death, because right before, well, the student who died, he used to write a blog, some blog type expose on his fellow students. The day after he died, he was supposed to be releasing some post that was going to expose all the kids who were in detention that day for some huge secret that each one had as individuals, not as a group. And so the story is about trying to, like I said, reveal the mystery. Ow, 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 ow. The story is about trying to reveal the mystery, and we're also watching these teens go through their love relationship drama. Interesting, really interesting. I felt like there was a part, maybe 2/3 in, where some of it could have been condensed a little bit, so it went on just a little bit too long. But I was interested in the story, so I gave it a solid 4-star rating. I'm not a huge YA consumer, which I know is probably going to seem weird since 2 of the books that I read in March and enjoyed were YA. But I like that one, and I got a e-copy from the library, so I don't have a copy to show you, and I just really don't have time to edit in book covers on here. So One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. Again, that is the beginning of a series, and I'm not sure if I'd say that I enjoyed it enough to really go and look up the series, but maybe at some point I will. Come, sit here. The next 4 books that I read were to judge the BookTube Prize Octafinals round, And the first of those was Spring by Alice Smith, and I enjoyed it, although not quite as much as I have liked previous books in the series. So Alice Smith has been working on a seasonal quartet. So far she's released autumn, winter, and spring. And I liked autumn, I loved winter, and I really liked spring. So I like spring a lot, just not as much as I enjoyed winter. Alice Smith's brand of fiction, at least that she writes in this series, is she incorporates current events and personalizes them by following a character who illustrates the struggle, usually of immigration and refugee crisis, and the impact that it has on the world, through showing the impact on one person who I guess represents that part of the world. And in spring, she highlights the crisis of refugees and specifically how it impacts children when their family members, when their parents are placed in these detention centers. And of course, because these books are set in the United Kingdom, it highlights the treatment that these refugees or immigrants receive in those countries. And another thing that is incorporated in these books is a lot of wordplay, really clever wordplay, word etymology, word origins, and how that spills over to show people origins, human origins. So I talked a lot about that in my video wrap up of my Judging the BookTube Prize previous round. The next book that I read was Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson, which was a retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but a reimagining of, instead of making a monster, how we would make a robot in present times. And the discussion of gender and origin as well in this book. So I thought it was clever, I thought it was literary, even though it wasn't necessarily my particular brand of enjoyment, I still gave it a high rating. The next book that I finished was Inland by Teo Obrecht, another BookTube Prize contender. And this one, I also gave a 4-star rating, even though there were some places where I felt like the book droned on a little bit too much. It was kind of a Western set in the time where people are going west. And so there was discussion of homesteads and people being exposed to environmental elements and living under really harsh conditions because they didn't have access to water, or they lived too far from their neighbors, or they were just suffering from lack of communication, and so they didn't know what was happening with their family members. And in this one, we're following two storylines. One about a boy who is orphaned and takes to a life of crime when he joins some kind of a gang, some kind of a posse, kind of a Dickensian experience, Dickensian orphan experience. And what are you doing? And then the next storyline, we're following a woman who has followed her husband to establish a homestead, and he's also become pretty important in their community. He has a newspaper, and he's been exposing some political corruption, but now that he's gone missing, she's dealing with the gender repression because she wants to use the voice that her husband has established, because she wants to speak out against the injustices that she and her neighbors are suffering. I thought it was interesting, but again, I felt like the two storylines didn't quite come together in the way that I wanted them to. But again, that was my personal enjoyment. I liked the book, I didn't love it. And the last book that I read to judge the BookTube Prize was Where Reasons End by Yoon Lee, which was about a woman whose son had died, and she continued to speak with him as though he was alive. And it pushed the boundary of preserving connection, because she was having conversations with her son that would not have been possible based on the limitations of their relationship while he was alive. And so you could see that it was her attempt to preserve who he was and continue his life even though he had died. You didn't like that book? No, I didn't like that book either. I felt like the writing was really staccato, and I just didn't like the premise, didn't like the plot, didn't like the writing style. It wasn't the book for me. And so after all of that, I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser, and so the last book that I read in March was a fun YA read. This is Salty Bittersweet by Mira Cuevas, and this is a YA novel that I got from the publishers for review as well. This came from Blink YA Publishers, and I enjoyed this a lot. It was about a teenage chef wannabe who gets offered a place to study with a Michelin starred chef in France, and so it's about her going to France for the summer, but spending her summer in a kitchen, being abused essentially as she fights her way to the top in this class. But while the bulk of the book was about restaurant dreams and had this main character sharing her experiences cooking some really mouth-watering, tantalizing sounding dishes, she also had time to explore a relationship and possibly fall in love, and also deal with some drama with her family being split apart and a new family starting. So there was a lot covered in this book. It wasn't just the typical teenage romance. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Gave this one 4 stars as well. And yeah, those are the books that I finished in March. I know it's really late. We're almost ready to do our April recap, but I just wanted to come on here and talk about those books for a little bit so you'll know what I read in March and what I have going in April, which is all the books that I have spoken about before. So far, my April reading has been going really well. I have been finishing some books that I've started a long time ago and just needed to finish them. So a lot of books that you've been hearing me talk about in the past are going to get resolved and finished and talked about in my April recap video. So I hope you'll join me soon for that. We're going to try to start making videos a little bit more timely. This little one, she takes a lot of my time during the days, and I don't know how you guys are doing with this stay in place and lockdown. They say you shouldn't call it lockdown because it's more or less voluntary, but having my husband home during the day and him having to teach and the meetings that he has and all of that, it's just, our schedule is a little bit different. Some things that I feel like I was able to do while it was just us here at home, we just are not able to do when everybody's here. So sorry that the video schedule has, well, there is no video schedule. Sorry that videos have been a little bit sporadic, but see with us. We're trying to read as well, and this little one, she doesn't want to take daytime naps these days, so we're struggling with a lot of those changes, but we enjoy being here. I know she enjoys it because she looked like she was about to take a nap, which I know sounds weird, right? Because I said that she doesn't want to take a nap, and then I tell you she's about to take a nap and I go film a video instead, but she wasn't gonna sleep. I know her. She tricks me like this all the time. Yes, okay, you could play with it. Just don't rip my book, okay? Because it's pretty. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you'll come back for another video very soon. Leave us a comment down below. And that was the pretty book. I'd love to chat with you in the comments. I'd love to hear from you about your reading, how your April is going, how your March went. And let's talk down there. Until next time, happy reading. Bye. Say bye. Say bye. Say bye. Smile for them. You gotta smile. Yeah.